The chamber was larger than any city on Earth, its ceiling lost in shadow and cold blue light, the walls carved from black stone that seemed to drink every sound, and in the very center of it all, under a circle of white light, a single human knelt in chains. Thousands of alien eyes watched him from rising platforms that curved around the hall like the ribs of a giant beast. Some had silver skin that shimmered like metal, others had scales that reflected the light in sharp colors, and some were tall and thin with glowing lines running across their faces, but all of them were silent now, waiting for one thing. The human's name was Captain Aaron Hale, though no one in that hall used his name. To them he was only the Terran prisoner, the last surviving commander from the failed defense of Earth's outer colonies, the one who destroyed 3 Imperial warships before his capture, the one who refused to surrender even when escape was impossible. Heavy chains bound his wrists and neck, glowing faintly with alien energy, yet his back was straight, his head lifted, and his eyes calm. He did not look like a man about to die. Above him, on a throne carved from white crystal, sat the ruler of the Galactic Empire, the alien queen. Her presence filled the chamber without her saying a word. Her crown floated slightly above her silver hair, and her long dark cloak spread across the steps like liquid night. A tall general stepped forward, his armor sharp and red, his voice echoing through the chamber. This human led attacks against Imperial forces, he destroyed 3 warships, he caused the deaths of thousands of our soldiers, and he refused to kneel before our flag. A low murmur spread across the crowd, sharp clicks and deep growls mixing in anger. He stands guilty of rebellion against the Empire, the general continued. The punishment is public execution. The crowd roared in agreement, the sound shaking the stone floor beneath Aaron's knees. But Aaron did not move. He remembered the burning sky above Earth's colony world, he remembered the sound of children crying as ships fell from orbit, he remembered his crew choosing to stay behind so civilians could escape, he remembered watching his final missile strike the Imperial flagship before his own ship was torn apart. He had expected death many times before, this moment did not frighten him. The general turned toward the throne and bowed deeply. Your Majesty, we request your command to proceed. All eyes lifted to the queen. For a long moment, she said nothing, her gaze rested on the human below her, studying him not like a ruler studying an enemy, but like a scientist studying something rare. She had watched the battle recordings herself, again and again. She had seen the way the human fleet broke formation to shield civilian transports. She had seen how this captain turned his damaged ship directly into her armada instead of fleeing. She had seen him stay at his post even when flames climbed the walls around him. Most species begged for mercy when defeat was certain, most chose survival over loyalty, but humans, she had noticed, were different. The general grew impatient. Your Majesty, he pressed, shall we begin? A blade of pure light formed in the executioner's hand, bright and humming, ready to strike. Aaron lifted his eyes toward the throne. He did not shout, he did not curse, he did not plead, he simply waited. The queen slowly rose to her feet, the movement alone was enough to silence the hall. Then she raised her hand. The executioner froze, the blade flickering but unmoving. A stillness fell over the chamber so deep it felt heavy in the air. Her voice was calm, but it carried to every corner of the hall. I claim that human, she said. Confusion rippled through the council platforms. No one will harm him, she ordered. Shock exploded across the chamber, generals stepped back, advisors whispered in fear, the executioner lowered his weapon as if burned. The red-armored general looked up in disbelief. Your Majesty, he is an enemy of the Empire. The queen's eyes never left the human. He is mine, she replied. Aaron felt the chains around his wrists power down slightly, their glow dimming. He did not understand what was happening, but he knew this was not mercy, this was something else. The council erupted into argument, voices rising, accusations forming, words like weakness and betrayal echoing in the air. But the queen's raised hand remained steady, and no one dared move against her command. In that moment, the fate of a single human had shifted the balance of an entire empire. And no one in that hall understood why. If you want to see what happens next and uncover why the most powerful being in the galaxy protected a human enemy, make sure to subscribe to this channel so you do not miss the next part of this story. The chamber did not calm after the queen's words, it fractured. Voices rose from every level of the council platforms, some sharp with anger, others low with fear. The word human echoed like an insult, like a disease, like a mistake that needed to be erased. Captain Aaron Hale still knelt in the center, though now the chains around his wrists had gone dark, the energy restraints no longer burning his skin. He did not move because he did not trust the silence. He had fought enough battles to know that stillness often meant something dangerous was about to happen. The red-armored general stepped forward again, his jaw tight, his four eyes fixed on the throne. "Your Majesty, the council demands explanation." The queen did not look at him, her gaze remained on the human below as if the rest of the chamber no longer existed. "There will be no execution," she said calmly. "That is not an explanation," another counselor snapped, a tall thin alien whose voice vibrated like metal scraping metal. "The human destroyed Imperial warships, he killed our soldiers, he attacked our expansion fleets, why protect him?" The word protect hung heavy in the air. The queen finally shifted her eyes toward the council, and for a brief second the temperature in the hall seemed to drop. "Because he is not what you think," she answered. Murmurs spread again, louder now, restless. The general folded his hands behind his back, trying to control his tone. "He is human, that alone defines him." The queen's expression changed slightly, not anger, not emotion, but something thoughtful. "Does it?" she replied. Aaron listened carefully, though he understood only parts of their language. The tone was clear enough, they were arguing over him, as if he were an object placed on display. He refused to look small. The queen turned to one of her attendants. "Show them," she ordered. Above the chamber, a massive holographic display flickered to life, blue light washing over the stone walls. The image showed space, dark and endless, then the shape of an Imperial fleet moving toward a small human colony world. Some council members leaned back with satisfaction, remembering the start of that campaign. It was meant to be simple, a demonstration of power, a warning to the rest of Earth. Then the footage changed. Human ships appeared, fewer in number, smaller in size. They did not retreat. Instead, they broke formation and moved directly between the Imperial fleet and the colony transports trying to escape. The general frowned slightly, he had seen this recording before. The queen did not speak, she let the silence stretch as the footage continued. A human cruiser exploded, debris spinning into the void, but instead of scattering, the remaining ships tightened their defensive pattern, covering the civilian vessels. They were protecting supply ships, one counselor said dismissively. "Look closer," the queen said softly. The image zoomed in. The so-called supply ships were not military at all, they were evacuation transports filled with families. Children. Elderly. Unarmed civilians. A ripple of discomfort moved across some sections of the chamber. "They could have retreated," the queen continued, "they could have preserved their fleet and fought another day." The footage shifted again, now focusing on a single damaged human warship, its engines failing, fires visible along its hull. "That is him," the queen said quietly. "Captain Aaron Hale's ship." Instead of fleeing, it turned directly toward the Imperial flagship, accelerating on failing thrusters, weapons charging beyond safe limits. "He attempted suicide attack," the red-armored general said coldly. "No," the queen replied, "he attempted delay." The recording showed the human ship firing everything it had, missiles, rail cannons, even escape pod thrusters used as weapons, buying precious minutes for the transports to jump to faster-than-light travel. The Imperial flagship took heavy damage, enough to disrupt formation, enough to create chaos. "He knew he would lose," the queen said, "he stayed anyway." The hall grew quieter. "He had opportunity to escape," she continued. "Our interceptors had not sealed the perimeter yet, his ship still had minimal jump capacity." The general's eyes narrowed. "He chose not to." "Yes," the queen said, "he chose not to." The footage ended with Aaron's ship finally disabled, drifting powerless before boarding craft surrounded it. Silence filled the chamber again. The queen turned back toward the human prisoner below. "When he was captured," she said, "he was offered survival in exchange for cooperation." Several council members shifted uncomfortably, they knew what that meant. He was shown recordings of his burning cities, he was told Earth would fall regardless of his silence. The general spoke carefully, "Interrogation is necessary during war." He did not speak, the queen continued as if she had not heard him. The hologram flickered again, now showing a dim interrogation room, Aaron restrained but upright, blood at the corner of his mouth, yet his eyes steady. "He was asked for fleet codes," she said, "he was asked for planetary defense maps. And he refused." The chamber remained silent. "He did not beg," she added, "he did not trade information for comfort, he did not ask for mercy." The red-armored general's voice hardened, "That is stubbornness, not honor." The queen finally faced him fully. "No," she said softly, "that is loyalty." The word echoed differently than the others. In our empire, she continued, service is maintained through fear, through power, through threat of punishment. She looked around the chamber slowly. But humans, she said, fight for something else. For each other? Aaron felt the weight of her words, though he could not understand every sentence. He recognized his own battle playing above them. He recognized the moment his crew chose to stay. The general took a slow breath. Even if that is true, he is still our enemy. Yes, the queen agreed calmly. That is why he is valuable. A new wave of whispers erupted, sharper this time, filled with suspicion. Valuable, one counselor repeated. The queen stepped down one level from her throne, a rare movement that caused several guards to tense. He represents a species we misjudged, she said, a species that grows stronger when cornered. Her eyes returned to Aaron. And I intend to understand that strength before we face it again. The red-armored general studied her carefully, realization slowly forming behind his expression. This is not mercy, he said quietly. The queen's lips curved almost invisibly. No, she replied. It is strategy. And in that moment, the human understood one thing clearly. He had not been saved. He had been chosen. The story of the war did not begin with human aggression, but that was how the Empire told it. In the official records of the Galactic Empire, it was written that humanity fired first, that a Terran fleet attacked a peaceful Imperial survey group near the edge of their expanding borders, that humans were reckless and territorial, unwilling to accept the rule of a greater civilization. But the truth was far more complicated, and far more dangerous. Years before the execution hall, before the chains and the throne and the queen's raised hand, human deep space scanners detected something strange moving beyond Pluto, large objects, silent, controlled. Earth sent messages, simple greetings in many languages, math equations, maps of stars, signals meant to show peace. There was no reply. Then one day, without warning, a mining colony near Jupiter went dark. No distress call, no explosion recorded, just silence. When a human patrol ship arrived, they found the station torn open like a broken shell, metal twisted inward, not outward, as if something had crushed it from the inside. 200 workers were gone. No bodies. No survivors. That was when fear entered the human government for the first time. They tried again to communicate, stronger signals, clearer messages, warnings that the system was inhabited. The answer came not in words, but in ships. Imperial cruisers dropped out of faster-than-light travel near Mars, elegant, massive, and armed. Their message was simple and cold: Earth's system now belonged to the Empire, humanity would be allowed to exist under supervision, resources would be collected, expansion would be controlled, resistance would be punished. To the Empire, it was a generous offer. To humanity, it was an invasion. Earth did not surrender. Instead, it did something the Empire did not expect. It prepared quietly. Humans were not the strongest species in the galaxy, not the oldest, not the most advanced, but they had one dangerous habit: they adapted quickly. Factories shifted from civilian production to warship construction, mining stations were reinforced into defense platforms, old satellites were turned into weapon systems. Every nation on Earth argued fiercely, but when the first Imperial warning shot destroyed a lunar defense station, the arguing stopped. The first battle near Mars was short and brutal. Imperial ships sliced through human defenses with advanced plasma weapons, but humans did not retreat in panic. They observed, they learned. They noticed Imperial shields overloaded briefly after sustained kinetic impact, they noticed fleet formations were rigid and predictable, they noticed commanders valued perfect alignment over flexible response. Humans began to design tactics around those weaknesses. Instead of matching power with power, they used speed and chaos. Small, fast ships equipped with rail cannons struck shield weak points repeatedly, retreating before return fire could lock on. Drone swarms confused targeting systems, hacked signals created false fleet readings. The Empire called it dishonorable warfare. Humans called it survival. Captain Aaron Hale was not famous at the start of the war. He was just one commander among many, stationed in the outer colonies, responsible for escort missions and civilian protection. But everything changed during the Battle of Epsilon Gate. The Empire sent 3 warships to cut off a human evacuation route. They believed it would break Terran morale. Aaron had only one cruiser and 2 frigates under his command, badly outmatched. Retreat was the logical choice. Instead, he ordered his ships to scatter and attack from 3 different vectors, forcing the Imperial ships to divide their fire. He used the asteroid field nearby as cover, launching missiles from behind drifting rock, hiding thermal signatures, striking shields repeatedly in the same location until they flickered. When one Imperial ship adjusted formation, Aaron predicted the movement and rammed his damaged cruiser directly into its flank at full speed, disabling both vessels but opening a path for the evacuation transports behind him. The explosion was visible across the sector. The Empire did not understand why a commander would sacrifice his own ship when retreat was possible. They assumed desperation. But when battle reports showed similar patterns across multiple human fronts, sacrifice to protect civilians, risky maneuvers to save a single colony, ships refusing to withdraw until the last transport jumped to safety, the Imperial High Council grew uneasy. Humans were not fighting for territory alone. They were fighting for each other. The turning point came during the defense of Callisto Colony, the same battle whose footage had played above the execution hall. The Empire deployed an overwhelming fleet, expecting surrender within hours. Instead, they faced coordinated human resistance across orbit, surface, and deep space. Human engineers had hidden rail cannons beneath ice layers, surprise attacks struck from beneath frozen oceans, civilian transports launched at staggered intervals to confuse pursuit. Aaron Hale commanded the final defensive line. When Imperial interceptors broke through and targeted evacuation ships, he did not wait for orders. He drove his cruiser straight into the center of the enemy formation, knowing it would not survive, knowing there would be no rescue. He overloaded his reactor beyond safety limits, channeling excess energy into weapons for one final assault. 3 Imperial warships were destroyed in the chaos. The evacuation fleet escaped. The Empire lost more in that single battle than they expected to lose in the entire campaign. And that was when fear replaced confidence. The Empire had conquered dozens of species across the galaxy, some had superior technology, some had stronger armies, but all of them eventually calculated survival over resistance. Humans did not calculate the same way. They accepted loss if it meant protecting their people, they endured suffering without surrender, and worst of all, they learned from every defeat. Imperial analysts began studying human psychology, searching for weakness, searching for a point of collapse. Instead, they found something unsettling. The more pressure humanity faced, the more united it became. The more cities were bombed, the more volunteers joined the fleet. The more soldiers were captured, the more commanders like Aaron Hale rose to replace them. This was not a species fighting for pride. It was a species fighting for home. And in the quiet chambers of the Imperial Palace, the alien queen watched the reports alone, replaying the footage of human ships standing between her fleet and helpless transports. She did not see madness. She saw something her empire had lost long ago. Devotion without fear. That realization disturbed her more than any battlefield loss. Because if humans were willing to burn their own ships to protect one another, then conquering them would not end the war. It would only begin something far worse. The private chamber of the Queen was nothing like the execution hall. There were no crowds, no shouting generals, no blowing weapons, only a wide circular room made of smooth white stone and tall windows that showed the endless stars outside. Captain Aaron Hale stood in the center, no chains on his wrists now, no guards touching him, though he knew he was still surrounded by unseen protection. The alien queen stood near the window with her back to him, her long cloak falling quietly to the floor, her hands resting behind her. For several long seconds, neither of them spoke. Aaron did not bow. He had made a promise to himself during capture that he would never kneel willingly before the Empire, and he would not break that promise now, even if she had spared his life. "You do not fear death," the Queen said without turning around. Her voice was calm, almost thoughtful. "I fear failing my people," Aaron replied simply. She slowly turned to face him, her silver eyes sharp but not cruel, studying him as if he were a puzzle she had not yet solved. "Most species fear pain," she said. "They fear isolation, punishment, the loss of comfort." She stepped closer, stopping only a few meters away. "You endured interrogation for 17 days, she continued. "You were offered protection, safety, even status inside the Empire, yet you refused. Aaron's jaw tightened slightly. You burned our colonies, he said quietly. And you destroyed our warships, she answered just as calmly. The air between them felt tense but not violent. You could have saved yourself, she said, why didn't you? He did not answer immediately. He thought of his crew, of Lieutenant Mara who sealed the engine room while it flooded with radiation, of the mechanic who stayed behind to manually fire the last missile, of the civilians packed into transport ships, crying but alive. Because they trusted me, he finally said. The Queen watched his face carefully, searching for deception, for exaggeration. She found none. In the Empire, she said slowly, trust is conditional, loyalty is purchased, obedience is enforced. She walked past him, her voice growing quieter. Our generals serve because they fear losing power, our soldiers fight because retreat means execution, our council obeys because dissent means exile. She stopped at the center of the room, turning again to face him. We conquered dozens of worlds, she said, but we never asked why their people stopped resisting. Aaron frowned slightly, because you were stronger. Yes, she agreed, stronger in weapons, stronger in ships. Her eyes narrowed slightly. But not stronger in spirit. The word sounded strange coming from her, as if it was unfamiliar. When we attacked your colonies, she continued, we expected surrender within days. Your technology is inferior, your fleet is smaller, your resources limited. She paused. Instead, your resistance increased. Aaron did not deny it. You protected civilians at the cost of military advantage, she said. You sacrificed ships to save children. You refused negotiation when defeat was certain. She stepped closer again, her gaze intense but not hostile. That behavior is illogical. It's human, Aaron replied. For a brief moment, something shifted in her expression, not weakness, not softness, but recognition. When I was young, she said quietly, my predecessor crushed a rebellion on one of our outer worlds. Her tone changed slightly, more distant. The rebels fought for independence, not power, not territory, simply the right to choose their own future. Aaron listened carefully, surprised by the change in direction. The rebellion was destroyed, she continued, but even after their cities were erased, small groups continued to resist for years. She looked toward the stars through the window. I asked why they did not surrender. And what was the answer, Aaron asked. They believed something mattered more than survival, she said. Silence settled between them. For the first time, she admitted, I saw that fear alone does not create strength. She turned back to him. It creates obedience. The difference was clear in her voice. You saw that in us, Aaron said. Yes, she replied. She walked slowly around him, studying him from different angles as if he were both a soldier and a symbol. You were prepared to die at Epsilon Gate, she said, not because you wanted glory, not because you believed you would win, but because you believed someone else's life was worth more than your own. Aaron met her eyes. That's leadership, he said. No, she corrected softly. That is devotion. The word felt heavier this time. The Queen stepped back, folding her hands calmly. My empire is powerful, she said, but it is fragile. Aaron did not expect that confession. Fragile, he repeated. Yes, she said, because it stands on fear, and fear collapses when power weakens. She moved toward a control panel on the wall, activating a holographic display of multiple star systems, many marked with unrest signals. If even one major defeat shakes the illusion of invincibility, she continued, worlds will begin to question our rule. Aaron looked at the map, noticing flashing red points spreading slowly outward. You're afraid, he said quietly. She did not deny it. I am cautious, she corrected. She turned off the display and faced him directly. That is why you are alive, she said. He understood then. You don't want to destroy humanity, he said slowly. I want to understand it, she replied. Her voice lowered slightly, more serious now. Because if humans fight harder when cornered, if they unite under pressure instead of breaking, then continued war will not weaken your species. She held his gaze steadily. It will forge it into something even more dangerous. The truth settled heavily in the room. Aaron realized she had not spared him out of mercy, nor admiration alone. She had spared him because humanity frightened her. Not their weapons, not their numbers, but their loyalty. And as she stepped back toward the window, staring once more into the endless stars, he understood something else just as troubling. If the Queen was questioning her own empire's foundation, then the war between humanity and the Empire was no longer just about territory. It was about survival of two very different ways of ruling the galaxy. News of the Queen's private meeting with the human did not stay private for long. In the imperial capital, information moved faster than light, carried by whispers, by encrypted signals, by servants who pretended not to listen and guards who pretended not to notice. Within hours, the phrase "the human lives" echoed through council chambers, military barracks, and hidden communication channels across the planet. And with it came something far more dangerous than anger. Doubt. The red-armored general, High Commander Vaylor, did not shout this time. He did not protest publicly in the execution hall. Instead he moved quietly, calling private meetings with senior officers and council members who had long believed the Empire was growing too cautious. The Queen hesitates, he told them in a sealed chamber deep beneath the palace. She questions our expansion, she studies the enemy instead of crushing them. A tall counselor with crystal skin leaned forward. You believe she is weakening? I believe, Vaylor said carefully, that she is allowing emotion to interfere with conquest. The word emotion was dangerous in imperial politics. Rulers were expected to be absolute, cold, decisive. Another voice joined the conversation, lower and more calculating, and the human. Vaylor's expression hardened slightly. He is not a prisoner anymore, he said, he is influence. Meanwhile, above them in the high levels of the palace, the Queen stood before the full Imperial Council once again, Captain Aaron Hale positioned beside her throne, unchained, unarmed, yet unmistakably present. Gasps and murmurs filled the chamber at the sight of him standing freely. You bring him here openly, one counselor said sharply, as if he were an honored guest. The Queen did not raise her voice, she did not need to. He stands under my protection, she said calmly, and under my authority. Aaron remained silent, aware that every eye in the chamber measured him, calculated his threat, imagined his death. He is a symbol of rebellion, another council member argued, his survival encourages resistance. No, the Queen replied, his survival creates opportunity. She stepped forward slightly, her cloak flowing behind her like dark water. For decades, we have expanded without meaningful challenge, she continued, we have grown confident, predictable, comfortable. The word comfortable sounded almost insulting. Humans exposed a flaw in our thinking, she said, they do not surrender when logic demands it, they adapt. Vaylor finally stepped into the center of the chamber, his armor reflecting the cold light above. Your Majesty, he said respectfully, though tension filled his voice, adaptation can be studied without elevating a prisoner. He is not elevated, the Queen replied, he is observed. Observes beside your throne, Vaylor said, his tone sharpening slightly, observed in private chambers, observed without chains. A ripple of agreement spread among several counselors. Vaylor took one more step forward, the fleet watches this decision, our soldiers watch it, conquered worlds watch it. He paused, letting the weight of his next words settle. If the Empire shows weakness now, unrest will follow. Silence tightened the air. The Queen studied him carefully, understanding that this was no longer simple disagreement, this was a test of authority. Strength, she said slowly, is not proven by killing a captive. Strength is proven by victory, Vaylor replied immediately. And we are not victorious, she countered. The chamber shifted uncomfortably. Human resistance spreads, she continued, outer colonies report increased coordination, supply lines are being targeted with greater precision, their fleet grows more organized with every engagement. Vaylor's eyes flicked briefly toward Aaron. And you believe this human can change that, he asked. Yes, the Queen answered without hesitation. A wave of shocked murmurs swept the chamber. She raised her hand slightly to silence them. I intend to appoint him as royal military advisor, she declared. The words struck harder than any weapon. The chamber erupted, council members rising from their seats, voices overlapping in outrage, accusations of madness, betrayal, corruption. Aaron himself stiffened slightly, not expecting this public declaration. Vaylor's expression went still, too still. You would give an enemy access to imperial strategy, he said carefully. I would give myself access to human strategy, the Queen corrected. She turned toward Aaron briefly. He understands his species in ways our analysts cannot. Vaylor's jaw tightened, and if he deceives you? He knows the consequences, she said calmly. All eyes turned to the human. Aaron finally spoke, his voice steady but firm. I will not betray Earth. Gasps rippled through the chamber again. The Queen did not seem surprised. I did not ask you to, she said quietly. Confusion deepened across the council. I ask you to prevent a war that will destroy both our species, she continued. Vaylor laughed once, sharp and cold. You believe peace is possible after what has been done. I believe continued war ensures disaster, she replied. Vaylor stepped back slowly, but something had changed in his posture, in the subtle glances exchanged between him and several counselors. The political storm was no longer forming, it had begun. Outside the chamber, rumors spread even faster. Soldiers whispered that the Queen had fallen under human influence. Some claimed the human possessed unknown psychic ability, others said the Queen feared defeat. In distant sectors, conquered worlds monitored Imperial transmissions carefully, noticing hesitation in fleet movements, noticing internal debates leaking through encrypted channels. Back inside the council chamber, Vaylor gave a slight bow, too precise, too controlled. As you command, Your Majesty, he said. But his eyes were no longer simply angry. They were calculating. As the council session ended and members dispersed in uneasy silence, Aaron felt the weight of invisible lines being drawn across the Empire, alliances shifting quietly, loyalties tested in shadowed corridors. The Queen stood beside him, outwardly composed, but she understood the risk she had taken. By sparing a human, she had not only challenged tradition. She had challenged the foundation of imperial power. And somewhere deep beneath the palace, in rooms shielded from surveillance, High Commander Vaylor began drafting contingency plans. Because if the Queen would not protect the Empire from weakness, he would. The coup did not begin with explosions. It began with silence. For 3 days after the council confrontation, the imperial capital felt calm on the surface. Fleet patrols continued their routes, council members attended official ceremonies, and the Queen maintained her usual schedule. But beneath that calm, encrypted messages moved between loyalist commanders, fleet captains quietly reassigned their ships, and security codes shifted in ways only insiders would notice. Captain Aaron sensed it before he understood it. He had lived through enough military tension to recognize the feeling of a storm building behind clear skies. Guards who once stood at attention now avoided eye contact, patrol routes suddenly changed, certain palace doors sealed earlier than usual. He stood beside the Queen on a balcony overlooking the city when the first sign appeared. Far below, 3 Imperial destroyers that were supposed to remain in orbit shifted position abruptly, their engines glowing brighter as they aligned directly above the palace sector. That is not routine, Aaron said quietly. The Queen did not look surprised. No, she replied calmly. In the next second, the palace lights flickered once, then twice. Then the alarms began. Not loud and chaotic, but controlled, strategic, internal lockdown protocols activating across multiple sections at once. They are sealing command levels, Aaron said, recognizing the pattern instantly. Yes, the Queen answered, Vaylor has chosen his moment. As if summoned by his name, High Commander Vaylor's image appeared in a massive hologram across the capital skyline, projected from one of the orbiting destroyers, his armored figure towering above the city. Citizens of the Empire, his voice boomed across every channel, your Queen has endangered our future. Inside the palace, loyal guards rushed into formation, weapons drawn, defensive shields activating across corridors. Aaron felt a strange calm settle over him. This was familiar ground now, not politics, not debate, but survival. She has elevated an enemy to power, Vaylor continued. She hesitates while humanity regroups, she risks our dominance for the illusion of peace. In orbit, more ships shifted alignment, targeting systems locking onto palace defense grids. She is compromised, Vaylor declared. For the stability of the Empire, command authority now transfers to military leadership. Several sections of the city responded instantly, troops loyal to Vaylor securing communication towers, council members publicly declaring support, war banners appearing across military districts. But not all obeyed. Within the palace, the Queen turned toward Aaron, her expression composed but decisive. This is where your value becomes clear, she said. He gave a short nod. What are your loyal forces? He asked quickly. 20% of the Capital Guard, 2 fleet squadrons beyond immediate orbit, and several outer commanders awaiting confirmation, she replied. Then we don't hold the palace, Aaron said, his mind already mapping scenarios. We break his coordination. Before she could respond, the first impact struck. One of Vaylor's ships fired a precision strike at the outer defensive shield, not to destroy it, but to overload specific segments. The palace trembled. Energy barriers flickered, corridors filled with smoke as secondary systems kicked in. Loyal guards clashed with insurgent troops inside the lower levels, plasma fire lighting the marble halls. Aaron grabbed a fallen weapon from a wounded guard, checking its balance quickly, unfamiliar but manageable. You are not trained with Imperial arms, the Queen said. I don't need to be, he replied, I need to disrupt. He quickly requested access to tactical displays, surprising several Imperial officers who hesitated before granting it under the Queen's authority. A holographic map revealed Vaylor's strategy clearly. Simultaneous strikes on communication hubs, coordinated misinformation broadcasts, and controlled orbital dominance. He's not attacking everywhere, Aaron said, he's attacking confidence. The Queen watched him carefully. If citizens believe he controls the capital, they will align with him, she said, understanding. Then we make it clear he doesn't, Aaron replied. Instead of reinforcing the throne chamber as most advisors suggested, Aaron proposed something unexpected. Broadcast live footage of the Queen standing openly within the palace, unhidden, unafraid, while loyal forces regained key command centers. Visibility over force, he said quickly, humans survive wars by protecting morale first. The Queen hesitated only a moment before nodding. Within minutes, Imperial networks lit up with live transmission, the Queen standing beside the human commander in a damaged but intact command hall. Citizens, she said calmly, even as distant explosions echoed, the Empire stands. Meanwhile, Aaron directed small elite teams through maintenance tunnels rather than main corridors, avoiding direct confrontation and targeting power relays that Vaylor's forces depended on. Human tactics, unpredictable movement, fast strikes, retreat before counterattack. Vaylor had expected a defensive stand. Instead, he faced disruption. One by one, his control nodes flickered offline, communication lag spread between his orbital fleet and ground troops. Inside the palace, Aaron led a small squad to intercept a group attempting to breach the Queen's private command core. The firefight was brief but intense, plasma bolts scorching walls, energy shields collapsing under pressure. Aaron moved with instinct rather than elegance, using debris for cover, flanking when opponents expected direct engagement. An explosion knocked him backward, pain tearing through his side, but he forced himself upright, firing one last disabling shot that stopped the breach attempt. High above, Vaylor watched the tactical feeds with growing frustration. He fights like they do, one of his officers muttered. Yes, Vaylor replied coldly, that is the problem. As loyal fleet squadrons finally dropped from faster than light travel at the edge of the system, Vaylor realized the momentum had shifted. His strike had been clean and bold, but not decisive. And in political warfare, hesitation was fatal. Within hours, his forces began losing cohesion, commanders uncertain which side would ultimately prevail, some withdrawing to avoid being labeled traitors if the coup failed. By nightfall, the palace stood damaged but secure. Vaylor's destroyers retreated beyond immediate orbit, not destroyed, but forced back. Inside the command chamber, smoke still hanging in the air, Aaron stood wounded but steady beside the Queen. You chose a human tactic, she said quietly, observing the battlefield report stabilizing. You chose to trust me, he answered. She studied him for a long moment. The coup had not fully ended, Vaylor still commanded fleets beyond the capital, unrest still simmered across sectors. But something irreversible had happened. An Imperial Queen had stood beside a human during open rebellion. And together, they had survived. Somewhere in the darkness beyond orbit, Vaylor stared at the shrinking image of the capital on his tactical display, his eyes cold, calculating his next move. Because this was no longer just a coup. It was the beginning of civil war. The capital did not celebrate after the coup failed. It exhaled. Smoke still drifted above the palace towers, damaged sections of the city glowed faintly where repair drones worked through the night, and in orbit, loyal Imperial ships held defensive formation while scanning for any sign of Vaylor's return. The war inside the Empire was not over, it had only changed shape. Captain Aaron Hale stood in a high command chamber overlooking the planet, medical patches sealed along his side, uniform scorched but intact. Below him, the Empire he had once fought against was now fractured from within. Behind him, the alien queen studied a star map filled with shifting signals, rebellion markers, fleet movements, and something new, hesitation across several conquered systems. "They are watching," she said quietly. "Your enemies?" Aaron asked. "Everyone," she corrected. The attempted coup had exposed a truth to the galaxy: the Empire was not invincible, and its ruler was willing to question its own foundation. That revelation spread faster than any fleet. Outer worlds once silent under Imperial rule began transmitting cautious inquiries, not full rebellion, not yet, but curiosity. Could the Empire change? Would it allow negotiation? The Queen turned from the star map and faced Aaron directly. "Vaylor has withdrawn to the outer military sectors," she said. "He claims temporary retreat to reorganize." "Which means he's preparing," Aaron replied. "Yes," she agreed. Silence settled between them, not hostile, not uncertain, but heavy with possibility. "You could end this by executing me," Aaron said plainly. "Unite your empire through shared anger." The Queen studied him carefully. "That would be the old way," she said. "And the new way?" he asked. She stepped toward the central console and activated a long-range communication array, one capable of reaching beyond Imperial borders, beyond contested sectors, all the way to human-controlled space. "The new way requires risk," she said. Aaron's eyes narrowed slightly as he realized what she intended. "You're going to contact Earth," he said. "Yes," she replied. "Your council will call it betrayal." "They already have," she answered calmly. Within hours, encrypted transmissions reached the Terran Defense Command, shocking human leadership who had expected either renewed assault or silence, not negotiation. The message was simple, direct, and unprecedented. The Imperial Queen requested formal dialogue under mutual ceasefire. In the days that followed, tension stretched across both civilizations, human fleets remained on high alert, Imperial commanders waited for Vaylor's counterstrike, and neutral systems prepared for possible escalation. Then, in a move that stunned the galaxy, the Queen made a public declaration. Standing before the full Imperial Council and broadcasting across open channels, she spoke not as conqueror, but as ruler facing truth. "The war with humanity has revealed weakness in our understanding," she said clearly, "not weakness of power, but weakness of principle." Council members shifted uneasily, some furious, some fearful. "We sought obedience," she continued, "they fought for loyalty." She paused, letting the contrast sink in. "Strength built on fear fractures under pressure," she said, "strength built on devotion endures." The chamber remained silent. "I will not lead an empire that survives only through intimidation," she declared. Gasps echoed through the hall. "We will pursue alliance with humanity," she finished, "not submission, not conquest, but cooperation." In that moment, history shifted. Captain Aaron Hale stood at her side, not as prisoner, not as advisor, but as witness to transformation. Vaylor's response came quickly from the outer sectors, condemning the declaration, rallying hardline fleets, accusing the Queen of surrender. But something unexpected happened. Several fleet commanders refused his call. They had watched the coup fail, they had seen the Queen stand unafraid beside the very enemy she was accused of favoring, they had seen stability return under her command. And they hesitated. In war, hesitation spreads faster than rebellion. Weeks later, a Terran delegation arrived at the edge of Imperial space under heavy escort, human warships ready but holding position, Imperial vessels tense but restrained. The meeting took place on a neutral station rebuilt after earlier battles, scarred metal walls now polished for diplomacy. Aaron stood once more across from human commanders, faces he had once fought beside. "You're standing next to the ruler who ordered our worlds attacked," one admiral said sharply. "Yes," Aaron replied calmly, "and she's standing next to the commander who destroyed her fleet." The tension in the room was thick enough to feel. The Queen spoke without arrogance, without threat. We misjudged you, she said simply. Continued war will forge your species into something far more dangerous than peace ever would. Silence followed, not weakness, but calculation. Human leaders were not naive, they knew trust would take years, perhaps decades, but they also understood something else. The empire had fractured. This was not surrender. It was opportunity. After long negotiation, limited ceasefire zones were established, joint observation programs began, and restricted trade corridors opened under strict supervision. It was not perfect peace. But it was a beginning. Back on the imperial capital, the Queen watched as reports confirmed Valar's influence shrinking, some of his fleets dissolving back into neutral command, others choosing loyalty to the throne rather than endless civil conflict. Aaron stood beside her once more on the balcony overlooking the stars. You changed your empire, he said quietly. No, she corrected, your species forced it to evolve. Far beyond their system, in darker regions of space where neither human nor imperial ships had yet traveled, unknown sensors recorded the shifting power balance of the galaxy. A new alliance forming where war had once raged. An empire choosing adaptation instead of dominance. A human commander standing beside an alien queen. And somewhere in that darkness, another civilization began to adjust its calculations. Because humanity had not been conquered. It had been recognized. And the galaxy was only beginning to understand what that truly meant.